Hey there, it is the month of April, and in case you didn't know, April is Financial Literacy Month. So, welcome to another episode of the Scholar Budget Podcast, where we help students like you to earn a debt free degree and navigate finances. And so, we get to speak to a money expert during Financial Literacy Month to give us some reminders of the things that we can start doing to help us to navigate finances and some other gems and nuggets that students and parents can utilize to earn a debt-free degree. So Eric Smith is a former billion-dollar lender and banking executive who created a financial literacy program and coaching company to change lives. He has taught money skills to over 1,000 NFL and NBA players, as well as 500,000 other people who have benefited from hearing his content, from hearing his advice, and actually taking action on it. He makes financial literacy personal, impactful, and fun. So I want to encourage you to take out your pen and your notepad, take notes, and take action. You're listening to the Scholar Budget Podcast, where we teach you how to earn a debt-free degree, grow your money, and claim every opportunity with your name on it. I'm your host, Raquel Bartoli. Let's jump right in. Today we have Eric with us. Hello, Eric. How are you doing today?
Hey, Rocky. Good to be with you.
Wonderful. And we're excited because we know that April is Financial Literacy Month, and we have the main man here with us today to talk to us about some of those things that maybe we need to be reminded of, or maybe some new things that can help our parents and our students when it comes to paying for school, handling debt, all of that good jazz. So, Eric, can you start by telling us a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Well, I'm from Noonan, Georgia, and grew up in a small town. I am a product of a single parent household. And I love speaking to a lot of the audiences because I feel like I can relate to a lot of those challenges having grown up certainly with limited resources. But I was fortunate enough to go to college and ended up getting into the banking field back in the late 80s and was a pretty substantial real estate lender, executive banker in the Atlanta market for 28 years.
Okay.
And then, as fate would have it, we got into banking professional athletes. And then I was a business manager for a couple of years. I hated doing that.
Mm,
And a buddy of mine who was the chaplain for the Atlanta Falcons at the time kind of pushed me to create a class to really just to teach NFL players basic money management.
wow.
I felt like I knew a little bit about the pro athlete space as far as how the money flowed because we were banking literally hundreds of Major League Baseball players and NBA and NFL players. So I was pretty comfortable with that. But really, what I wanted to do was to create something that I thought would really make a lasting impact. I did not want to try to be something that I was not. My background is in lending money and banking, so I'm a cash flow guy.
Yeah.
Uh, and a lot of people, they want to focus on the wealth. But the reality is, and what I found throughout my career, is that the wealth conversation, unfortunately, does not apply to most people because there's two steps to financial management. And the first step is what I focus on, and that's cash flow management.
Okay.
I would contend that if you don't get the first step correct, you're never going to have any wealth to manage. And
Right.
for
Very
most
true.
Americans, that's really what is the biggest struggle. And so, I created a class that teach NFL players basic money management. I got into doing that, kind of got into the NBA, doing work with those guys with the G League, and
Nice.
then got into college athletics. And, oftentimes when you start down a journey that you've never been down before, you never know what door is going to open and what door is going to shut. And
Right.
I'm just a firm believer, as long as you're consistent with your who you really are, and you're authentic, and understand the why behind what you're doing. I'm
Mm,
somewhat unique, and this. I joke that I have a terrible business model, right? I'm not selling anything. I don't sell a book. I don't take clients, but I also suggest I get a great people model, right? Because I have the opportunity to help a lot of people and mentor a lot of people. So what I found was the missing piece was really just a financial understanding, basic money skills. And so I
Right.
started this company back in 2009, really for the purpose of just teaching people, initially NFL players, and then we expanded to college athletics, and then to campus, and then corporate groups and trio groups, because we all have one thing in common. We all have got to figure this thing out. And
Right.
if you come from a background where your parents teach you all these things, you got a big advantage. But if you come from a background or family like I did, no one taught me a lot of this. So for
Mm,
me, it's just finding a fun way. As you know, I'm pretty high energy. And so for me, it's a fun way to take something that normally is somewhat boring and
yeah.
even intimidating for some people. And, I don't take myself too seriously. And so it just kind of adds to the, hey, if this crazy guy can figure it out, anybody can figure it out. And so that was really the initial push.
Absolutely. I love it. And so I hear you say that you've connected with a diverse background of people, like from professionals to athletes to students, but the one common denominator is managing money and finances. So, can you share how you transitioned, right, from being a billion-dollar lender to becoming a financial literacy coach? Like, what was that middle piece that kind of help you to switch gears? Is it when your friend approached you about creating the curriculum?
Yeah, it really was. I mean, we were doing business with three of the largest business managers in the country. And I actually, and I don't tell this part of the story that often, I actually started out wanting to be a business manager. I didn't want to be a
Okay.
financial literacy coach.
Wow.
I thought that my path was going down a different direction. And I actually did that for nearly 2 years while I was still part of a group running regional banks. I had a lot of
Okay.
people that I worked with. I had a great assistant that allowed me the freedom to do some of this. And we ended up signing four NFL players. And I was their business manager for about 2 years. But I hated doing that. It just was
Mm,
not what I was put here to do. And so,
okay.
as I was voicing the frustration to my friend James Trapp, he's the one who said, "Hey, why don't you just create something similar to what you've been doing for me for the last 3 years, and mentoring me about different cash flow things, you know, banking and borrowing, and just really the fundamentals." And so
Right.
that's how it all started. I went and had lunch with, at the time, the Falcons head coach Mike Smith and their general manager Tom Dombrowski, and and there was a guy there named Kevin Winston. He gave me some of the best advice. It hurt my feelings a little bit, but it was what I needed to hear. And he just said, uh, you want to save the whole world. He said, but
Mm,
the reality is in this world, a third of them don't need you. A third of them will never want you. He says, but there's a third that really could use what you're doing. But he says, Eric, the noise is too great here. So why don't you go catch them at the college level
okay.
before the volume gets too ramped up. And
Look at
so
that.
that's really how I got started with college athletics. I approached someone at the NCAA and said, "Hey, why don't..." Now this is back in '09. There was no companies
Mhm.
that had been created to teach college athletics, excuse me, college student athletes
Okay.
about basic money management, which really is unbelievable at this stage of the game.
Right.
But I approached them, and kind of a long story, but I ended up getting on the speakers registry, and that sort of launched me in the collegiate athletic space.
Nice. And that's cool because little did you know what you were doing, from the start, from college to being a lender, was really just positioning you to be able to connect with people using your own experience of lacking financial literacy through, young adulthood, plus what you were doing. And then now being able to share this with college students and so many other awesome people. So, how do you make financial literacy engaging and fun for your audiences? Because, like you mentioned, this is a topic that we all need. We need to hear it multiple times, but sometimes it can be a little daunting, overwhelming, or just not even tangible if you're not in a space where you're making money or able to budget. So, how do you make it fun and engaging?
Well, I think first and foremost, I'm focused on the audience. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not focused on what I want, right? I'm focused on trying to serve that audience. I have 60 minutes to teach a certain amount of content. I have developed some fairly decent presentation skills. I'm able to work a room. I'm able to, I use humor a lot. As you
Yeah.
know, I make fun of myself a lot.
Right.
If they're laughing at you, then, they're going to be more relaxed. And when they realize that I always say this, I don't want anything from them. I just want something for them. And I
Right.
want the life that they were intended to live. And so when they realize, it's almost like a paradigm shift because everybody's a little suspicious. Like,
Mm.
hey, what does this guy want?
Yeah.
Well, when they realize that, hey, he's just here to create a fun experience, right? And some of the things that we discussed for some of the audience members, they've heard it before.
Yeah,
To be honest with
absolutely.
you, Rocky, nobody in financial literacy has come up with an original thought in now present conversation about cryptocurrency and all the
Right.
digital money. But aside from that, you know, uh, financial literacy is financial literacy. Is how do you relate to people?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so oftentimes what I found was they were coming almost at a graduate level on a conversation, right?
Mm.
Now, I don't like the word dumbing down, but I think it does take some skill to make it relatable to everybody in that room because
Right.
if you have 250 people, we're getting ready to speak tomorrow to 250 people. There's going to be some people in that room that have advanced understanding of money, and then
Yeah.
there's going to be others that have no clue, right? And so, how do you speak to all those? And so that really, for me, is the challenge. It is more how do I get the content out in an enjoyable format? But what I have found
Mm-hmm.
is everybody likes laughing, right? And if you're smiling and laughing and having a good time, I do prize giveaways, we do game shows, we just
Love
do
it.
the unexpected, right? They
Yeah.
think it's going to be a boring presentation,
And then
and
you
when they're
surprise them.
done, yeah, it's like, hey. And so I always joke with my other speakers around the country, you know, uh, you, they're all sexy speakers, right? And so everybody expects something very, very high quality. But in my field, because historically the thought has been, oh my God, not another financial literacy program. The
Mm-hmm.
expectation is way down here, right? So the bar is a little bit lower. And
Ah,
so I think I benefit from that a little bit. And then when we just come in and I call it edutainment, right?
yes.
I'm entertaining and educating. And if
Beautiful.
I can make you laugh and cut up and just really have a fun time, I'm sneaky in that I can actually teach you a couple of things during that
Absolutely.
process.
Right. It's like they're learning and laughing and not realizing they're learning. So it's a beautiful, magical moment.
Exactly. That sounds good.
Awesome. Yeah. So, what do you share with students regarding paying for college and student loans? What have you shared in the past? What have you saw that really sticks? What's your take on that?
Well, and first and foremost, I encourage people, just going through the FAFSA process, right?
Mhm.
It can be somewhat daunting. But as far as the actual lending and what I've seen, even back when I was borrowing money when I went to school, was it was fairly easy to get federal student loans, and it seems to be that that's less the case nowadays, right?
Right.
And so you've got the direct plus loans now that are involving parents, and the biggest caution that I give, Rocky, is only borrow what you need.
Mm.
I have met so many students that, especially, believe it or not, in college athletics, where they're getting a stipend or scholarship and a Pell Grant,
Yeah.
right? Then they're actually borrowing money on top of that for living
Mm.
expenses. And it's like,
Right.
only borrow money that you actually need. Right. I
Absolutely.
know it's very tempting to want to subsidize our lifestyle with 20-year fixed federal student loan debt. But yeah, I just caution them to, just use some common sense when it comes to, what are you going to use those funds for? If you don't need it, then don't take the money.
Right.
Right. And,
Absolutely.
and then, a lot of what we do is just reinforcing that studentaid.gov is really the go-to place for information. We talk about, deferment.
Mhm.
What's the difference between a private student loan and a federal?
Right.
What are some of the things you need to be careful about when you're considering refinancing from a federal to a private?
Okay.
One of those is income driven repayment, which means that your payment will be adjusted. Now, present time, for the last 2 years, we can exclude those. But besides the last 2 years, if you had a job and you got a pay cut or you lost your job with a federal student loan, they gave you flexibility. They would either suspend the payment or
Hmm.
reduce it to a point where you could actually afford it. And,
Right.
with a private student lender, you don't have that option. And
Mm.
so I just try to make, hey, an understanding of, hey, this is federal, this is private. And I do a lot of mentoring. I do a lot of one-on-one sessions. So when we have specific questions about that,
Okay.
I'll address those. But, I don't pretend to be a financial aid expert.
Right. Of
Right.
course.
And so I try to really just provide, just like I do all my other programs, what's something common sense that
Yeah.
we need to be doing, that you'll be thanking your future, later on in life, you'll be thanking yourself for
Absolutely.
taking that step.
Yeah, and it's really about awareness because again, with financial literacy, I feel like it's one of those things where you're going to need to hear it a couple times because when you hear it the first time, right, maybe you're not ready to put it into play. And even the second time, but by the third time, you've gone through a few seasons, you're dealt with school, and it's like, okay, now I can actually put this into application. And so, again, it's down to awareness, knowing the difference, like you said, between the two different loans. And oh, I didn't think about that. And now, because I know this, I'm not going to go with the private loan because if I need that flexibility, it doesn't exist. So, awareness is key. And that's obviously what you're bringing forward to the table. So, thank you, Eric. Thank you for what you're
Yeah.
doing. And so, could you describe some of your most memorable experiences teaching money skills to the NFL and the NBA players, and even to other organizations? Like, what are some of your fond memories?
Yeah. Well, but because I did so much work with the NFL teams, oftentimes I get questions about that. One of my proudest moments might surprise you. It was actually being the first person to ever do a financial book club with an NFL rookie camp. And I did the Seattle Seahawks. And
Nice.
I did a book that you may have heard of. It's called Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yes.
Right. And that was a very impactful uh, opportunity. We spent 5 weeks doing that. The
Wow.
second thing that I did, I really created the first true mentoring program for NFL players.
Nice.
The NFLPA has one established, but mine was drastically different than theirs. And so, being able to, I'm very challenge driven. So being able to do things before anybody else has ever done it, that gets me excited.
Yeah.
Um, you know, honestly, I get excited about things that might not excite the average person. Just, when I have an opportunity to do something like partnering with the country's largest nonprofit credit counseling company
Mm.
and for mothers in distress, right? I have my own 1-866 number that they can contact and they get free credit counseling trying to
Wow.
figure out a way to improve their life,
Right.
right? And I'll give you a recent proud moment. I had introduced this 1-866 number to a group of trio directors uh, this past year in Las Vegas.
Hmm.
I went to a conference in Savannah about 6 or 7 weeks ago, and I did a presentation. And I had a room full of people, and we had about 20 people hanging around. And this lady came up, and I'm horrible with names because I meet so many people, but I'm
Yeah.
very good with faces, right?
Right.
And this is a true story that just recently, and I've actually told this twice. She said, I want to give you a hug. And, I don't turn down hugs. And so I
Yeah.
said, okay, I'll give you a hug. And I
Right.
said, what are we hugging for? And she goes, I just wanted to thank you. She goes, I called the 1-866 number. I actually scheduled a time with those guys, and I've got my life back on track.
Look at
And I just
them.
wanted to thank you for that.
That's
Right.
huge.
So when you can impact people like that, I was in an airport this past month, right? And I had a previous student athlete that ran into me,
Mm.
and he came up and he goes, "Hey, the money guy, right?" And 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 this student athlete just reminded me of all the things they had learned in my program. That was a really cool moment. I went to
Right.
Las Vegas 3 weeks ago for a credit union conference. and I walk in the room of vendors. They had, I think, 71 vendors.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked past this table, and this guy had a McNeese football. Well, McNeese State is in Lake Charles, Louisiana, and I
Okay.
had been there multiple times. Well, I walk in and I walk by this guy's table. He goes, "Wait a minute, I know who you are." He goes, "You taught me about money
Oh my
5 years
goodness.
ago,
Look at
right?"
that.
He goes, "I still use those tips that you gave me." So when
Wow.
you meet people like that, that you've had the chance to sit in front of, that
Make
to
an
me is an
impact.
honor. I mean, that's
Hmm.
what it's all about, you
Absolutely.
know,
I agree.
because it is really, you said about impact, but it's really, to me, it's understanding the motive for why I do what I do. It's about
Right.
trying to help other people, right?
Absolutely.
And I think we all have unique opportunities in whatever field we're in to do that.
Hmm.
Sometimes it looks grand and sexy, and sometimes it's just normal, just mundane things, right?
Right. Right.
And so I never
Conversation.
get too caught up in that, right? And so,
Right.
like, while ago, you made a good point about sometimes students need to hear things multiple times because they're evolving, they're going along their maturity
Right.
journey, right? And so I don't get too caught up on that, right? As far as who's here, who's not here, I just want to help. I just want to share information with people, and once they understand that you really don't want anything from them, that you're
Hmm.
just trying to use your skills. I mean, I'm a cash flow person, right? My expertise is not in wealth management, right? I know enough to be dangerous on that. And I say that tongue in cheek because I do a fundamental investing workshop. But
Okay.
anyway, I just stay in my lane,
Yeah.
right? I do what I know well. I've been blessed to, I've had a very successful banking career, but I chose to walk away from that career to do something that I felt like was more impactful.
Mm.
I'm a little strange. I think we're all put here for a reason.
Yes.
And I tell people, the two greatest days of your life, the day you were born, and then the second greatest day is when you realize why you were born, why you were put
Mhm.
here,
I love
right?
it. Yeah.
And so that's my approach to that.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And so, as someone who has worked with college and professional athletes, what advice do you have for students just starting to learn about managing their finances?
Well, first of all, don't take all the advice from TikTok,
Okay,
right?
that's a good one.
Because for many of the audience members, they're very comfortable and they trust TikTok. And let me just say that not everything you see on TikTok can you take for face value,
I hear you.
right? And so I would my first thought is, hey, read as much as you can, right? There's always a couple of books: Richest Man in Babylon, Millionaire Next Door, Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Mm,
And so I would say invest in your own knowledge. Take the time to read. I mean, nowadays, unlike when I was a college student, I mean, the internet has everything now at your
exactly.
disposal, right? And so we had to kind of go out of the way to get those resources. Now they're readily available, and I would just say, get some legitimate sources of information, sources
Okay.
that aren't trying to sell you something,
Right.
right? And just try to learn as much as you possibly can. The second thing is just be patient,
Okay.
right? I think you need to be intentional. I think everybody needs to be intentional, but you got to learn how to plan on what you're going to do with money before you get it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, we all have a plan. It's either a reactive or a proactive plan. A reactive plan is the most expensive one and usually
Mm,
leads to the least results,
yeah.
positive results, right? So the more proactive you can be about thinking about this, I think the more benefit that people are going to get.
Love it. So let's find the right resources, not rely on TikTok for everything, get some good books to
Right.
consume, and having a plan. And I love that because I feel that same way. Like we have to know what we're going to do with our money and how to manage the money before the money comes. Because if you're not ready, it's going to come at you. And then you're going to find yourself living paycheck to paycheck and wondering, how did you get here when you just got a $20,000, $30,000 raise? So yes, very, very good advice for those students just starting out.
Able
Actually, what about for our parents? Can you give maybe one or two tips to the parents listening and those parents who maybe they came from a background where there was no financial literacy, they're just barely holding on, but they want to break that cycle and they want to start doing some simple things with their scholars, whether they're in elementary, middle school, or high school, what are a few tips or suggestions you offer to those parents to start helping their scholars when it comes to financial literacy?
Well, first and foremost, start talking to your kids about money,
Mhm.
right? Because for many adults, they're not comfortable doing that.
Right.
Yeah. And then they never have the conversation. Honestly, you know, my mother never talked. I knew that she was good at managing pennies, but I never really truly understood, how bad we struggled. She wanted to kind of keep us from that,
Yeah.
and so what I would say is just figure out a way that you're comfortable bringing your kids into that conversation. And
Okay.
maybe, if you're not doing a spending plan or what other people call a budget on a monthly basis, this is a great thing to do to sit down with your kids to start planning on how you're going to spend next month's money,
Yeah.
right? And just doing something simple like just talking about, hey, what do you think is a good use of the money that we have coming in next month? And
Okay.
and then maybe as you're deciding on discretionary spending, have your children decide which discretionary items maybe they vote or something like that, right?
Yeah.
But
What
they
can they
need to
get rid of?
understand, yeah, absolutely. And understand that, sometimes in order to say yes for certain things, you have to say no to other things,
Yeah, that's
right?
true.
And so I think having that conversation helps to create and instill some discipline, right?
Yes,
That,
very true.
mom and dad don't have all the money to buy everything that you want, and I think it's important that we identify some goals as a family. And, I like doing things simply as silly, some people say it's silly, as not spending pocket change, right? As a family, get a big
Yeah,
jar. And when you bring change home, right,
put
there's
it in
something
there.
called a 52-week saving plan,
Right. We have
where
our
on the
little
very,
Coca-Cola can as a family. We drop
yeah,
our coins in there.
yeah, I still do it. I mean,
Yeah.
I still do it.
Mhm.
A 52-week saving plan where you start week one, you come up with $1, week two, $2, and you
Right.
try to make it through the whole year. Well, if you do that, you get to see all these ones accumulate. You got nearly $1,400. And
Yeah.
as a family,
You can
you
go do something
accomplish something
fun.
financial, right?
Yes.
But I think it's really important in the society we live in where everything is instant gratification, right?
Mhm.
Everybody's life is judged by social media, right? What we think somebody else's life is like. And, I think it's important that we teach our kids that, you can't always have everything when it comes to buying things. You can't always have everything now. There's a reason
Right.
why you want to save, right? What's the value of saving? And I think it's important that you have that conversation, maybe goal setting.
Yeah.
I mean, I can go on and on about that conversation, but, those are just a couple of things, have the conversation, set some goals as a family,
I love it.
discuss that, but don't hide the reality from, kids are much smarter than we sometimes give them credit for being, right?
Right.
If you're planning a trip to Disney World, then maybe you line item out all the different expenses, how much we're going to allocate every day for spending money,
Yeah.
right? And then have them part of that process. And then they kind of buy into it, right? So when you go to
Mhm.
Disney, they understand that we can't spend more than $45 a day,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
Why
because
we
they're
can't
part of
pay
the
$10
process.
for that bottle of water,
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
Eric, I really appreciate you sharing your success stories, your heart for what you're doing, the impact that you're making. And I know that what you're doing is not just for the person that's standing in front of you, but literally generations to come. And it's so needed, right? I, like you, did not have that financial literacy, and I'm still learning as an adult and trying to make things even better for my kids through sharing with them, budgeting with them, and helping them to understand the power of a dollar and how quickly it can go. Like it takes a lot of work to
Hmm.
get it in, but it goes by very
Oh,
quick.
man.
So,
Yeah.
so thank you so much, Eric. We appreciate you and thank you for joining us.
You're very welcome.
Hey there. I hope you were taking notes and you're ready to implement what you heard. If this podcast inspired you or helped you in any way, I would love for you to subscribe, follow, and share this with a student, parent, or educator you care about because sharing is caring. Also, your feedback means a lot. So please leave a written review of this show on Apple Podcasts. And if you ever want to connect outside of the podcast, you can find us at the Scholar Budget on Insta or the Book of Faces. So until next time, shine bright and put in the work so we can make those dreams a reality. Bye!